Yes, here we are. We're back here at the Chinwag. Continuing.
Part 2.
Yes, that's right. And this is a this is a special episode because it is the second part of our conversation with Monsieur Stephen Colbert. Because we had so much
He was amazing,
to talk about. He was amazing. He was astonishing. What a smart fellow.
Yeah, people, of course, know him very well, but I think we get into some stuff that you may not be familiar with. You know, I know he does interviews, but I think the Chinwag took him to some territory that is novel.
That's what we do, Steve.
Yes,
that's novel territory. It's all about crossing frontiers, Steve. It's all about bringing, isn't it? Isn't it?
Yes.
Isn't that what we do here?
There's something sort of earth-changing about the Chinwag is what we're trying to say.
I kind of think there is.
It's powerful.
Yes, I think that we're the psychoactive. Yeah, we're the psychoactive drug of podcasts, aren't we? Aren't we the one that really sort of changes your point of view? But before we get to more of Stephen Colbert, we had some exciting news, did we not, Steve?
Yes, we did.
Yes.
On Apple Podcasts, we have hit the 500 review mark, which is very exciting and shows that the Chinwag community is building, growing like a snowball down a hill, and various other metaphors.
Exactly.
Better metaphors.
Yeah, that's a runaway train, Steve.
Yes.
Absolutely. It's just
it's building a conflagration out of
control.
It's
a meteor. It's a meteor just streaking across the sky.
A tsunami.
A tsunami. Oh my God. It really is. It's incredible. But it is. It's an occasion. I'm told, and so we should be celebrating it, and that's fantastic.
Thank you.
We appreciate your support. We really do. And I've actually gone and looked occasionally at these reviews, and it's a wonderful thing. We get the 5-star reviews, but then it's funny. Every now and then I'll look at it, Steve, and if you notice this, you look at it, and somebody will really give us a lot of praise. We'll just absolutely just praise us to the skies, and then we get 2 stars. 3 stars, and I'm always confused. I'm like, what happened?
Well, maybe they're nipping at the wine. They're
maybe
a little drunk when they fill it out.
Yes, I'm talking to you, Jessica F18. I'm looking at who apparently a big Merlot fan.
F8, come on,
Jessica. Give us a glowing review and then 2 stars.
Right.
Come on, Jessica. Come on, work it out, for crying out loud, Jessica.
We better not mention people's names, because then other people are going to be hitting 1 and 2. Like, they're going to mention. No, we need the 5 stars.
Drag us
Come
down.
on, help us out with the 5 stars.
It's a wonderful thing, and God bless Jessica F18, seriously, for showing up at all and listening to us blather like this. It's an amazing thing. You really are, and please keep it coming. Just all the wonderful reviews and ratings and stuff like that. It's really great.
Comments.
We love it. And share the word of mouth. Is that what
tell
you
your friends, and you all know a handful of weirdos, and you know that's our thing. That's what we do here. So bring them on home.
Yeah, exactly. But just leave us notes, write us thoughts, any topics you want us to cover, questions, comments. You can find us on Instagram, TikTok, believe it or not. We're on the TikTok. Threads, Twitter.
Great.
Yes. And then people throw out a lot of interesting stuff, and we chase it down, because that's also what we do here. We're investigative journalists.
Yeah, that's right. I'm sure there's a Pulitzer in this for us at some point.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yes, you're absolutely right. There must be. You know what, Steve? There's at least a Peabody.
Least a
Peabody. You know what I mean?
Or 2, yeah.
Or any other thing that starts with a P. Any other award that starts with a P. Yeah, I smell Peabody, though. I really do. I smell Peabody. Oh dear. Well, now that we're done patting ourselves on the back, are you ready for this? Let's move on. Let's move on, because that's really what you're here for, the meat, the nub, the crux of the whole thing. Let us move on to our enlightening and surprisingly philosophical Chinwag with Mr. Stephen Colbert. Let's listen in.
There's a common topic on Chinwag is that there's the rational, and then there's the irrational, but then there's this cool middle territory, and Jung called this the irrational. Like, he uses an A in front of it, which means
the absence of any of it.
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, exactly. It's like in this territory where you have to be open to the experience, and you can't classify it. It doesn't fit. It's not a contradiction. It's not, the law of excluded middle or whatever. It's this crazy territory in between, and that's where
What's the law of the excluded middle?
Well, you can't have A and not A. You can't. It's in logic. You're prevented from having the thing and its contradiction, and you can't have any gray area between them. But that's logic.
But I think that A and not A for me is the heart of magical thinking.
Yes.
Yes.
And that magical thinking is very powerful with me.
I agree. Yeah.
And for me, there's this thing that I have come to think of as the tripwire of reality.
Mm-hmm.
And reality is a certain way, let's assume. But there's a desire for reality to be something else. Now, nothing can be done to make a tree, a sequoia, a pencil.
To make
nothing
it the other
can
thing.
be done to do
to
that.
make it what it's not.
Make it what it's not. But it can be that other thing as long as you have no intention to do so.
As long as you're not trying.
As long as you're not trying.
Yeah.
Because if you try.
Oh, that's interesting.
The universe, which maintains its own tripwires, and the tripwires are everywhere, and they maintain the universe. But if you can not tell the universe that you're going to change something, and the way to not tell the universe that you're going to change something is to not tell yourself that you're going to change something. So you have to have the intention. Amazing. And then no longer have the intention.
Right.
And then you mustn't ever question whether the intention still continues because you don't have it. In fact, you must forget.
That's amazing.
That you ever had it. And then it is possible the thing becomes something else. And it.
Wait a minute. What you're describing is almost acting too, is almost theater and acting as well.
I can understand
it's
that.
Actually the power. To me,
that.
That's what's so interesting. It's actually the opposite, Stephen, of what we've talked about like somebody like Aleister Crowley, who is a magician, who is actually like altering reality through will. You're actually taking the will out of it.
Well, that's religion versus magic.
Exactly. That's
religion
really cool.
is subservience to the Godhead.
Yes,
and magic is manipulation of the Godhead.
That's really cool.
And what I'm saying is that there is something else.
Yeah. There's
a third way.
Oh, okay.
Which is subservience to the Godhead. It's something like this. My mother used to always pray and taught me to pray, and I still do this thing. An ambulance goes by, and she would stop and she would say a prayer quietly. But I asked her what it was one day, and she said, I pray that person is kept safe, but that God's will also be done.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Now, how do you square those
amazing.
two, buddy?
Yeah, that's pretty great.
Square that.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. Yeah.
And that's kind of what I'm talking about without naming
fascinating.
Doesn't that like get the mind, it gets the mind focused in a really healthy way, because even though you may not be rearranging the world through a prayer, you are focusing what you think is really important and your values and clarifying your mind in a way. Like if I see an accident, I have this mantra I learned when I was in Asia, which is, may the Buddha reduce the suffering of all sentient beings, especially that guy, whoever you see. And it brings your mind to the right place,
Right.
That's my other mantra.
I can dig it.
That's the other one, yeah.
It reminds me of a line from Shadowlands, which I don't know if you ever saw that. That's about
a long time ago.
C.S. Lewis.
C.S. Lewis.
It was a play, and then it was a movie. Joy, which is his wife, the woman he falls in love with through correspondence and then ends up marrying. When Joy is dying, she has cancer, I believe. He's praying, and one of his atheist professor friends at Oxford is saying, "What are you doing? Do you think that's actually going to change anything?" And he goes, "I don't pray." This is Lewis says, "I don't pray to change God. I pray that God change me."
Yeah. I mean, we talk a lot about the imagination as not just the place where like Walt Disney and Hayao Miyazaki do their thing, but rather it's how you transform the world. Like you use your imagination to, it's a force in the world. It can change
magical thinking works. I hate to say.
Yeah.
No, it does. Yeah. It does.
I hate to say.
That's what's really crazy.
It does. It works, and it can be very destructive.
Yep.
Yeah,
just like
let's
any
not
magic.
Forget, yeah, right. It can be.
I mean, is there any magic that doesn't come with a cautionary tale?
Absolutely,
right.
No, totally, exactly.
I have this game I used to play with myself that is, that's related to the both is and is not. Okay, This is a game I used to play with myself. And this was kind of related to all the science fiction that I read.
I'm okay.
Because
Good.
in the
You're
science
making the
fiction that I-
transition for me. I wanted to talk about
in the science fiction that I read, it's actually in Farmer in the Sky. The boy wants to go to college, and the father says, "Well, what do you want to learn?" And he goes, "Go to the library, get this book, go teach yourself.
Right.
If there's something you can't find, I'll send you to college."
You
know what I mean? Like that was, which I don't think that's the healthiest response, but that's it. But certainly Larry Niven talks about this a lot, is that how is your circumstance formed suppositions about the world from which your logic extends that aren't true? It's merely a local condition.
Yeah.
And so, the people in the cave don't know that they're in a cave.
Right.
The people on the ring world don't know that there are other forms of world, that kind of thing. And so I used to try to break myself of my local condition. And what could I do to break myself of these bedrock, root user, kernel concepts that were affecting my entire worldview? What is a mountain so large and this is an image I used to have in my head. It was like driving down a road, especially a road with flat, and there'd be that blue hazy distance of a blue sky. I would try to imagine that wasn't blue sky, that I'm actually just looking at a mountain that's so large that I can't see its edges. That I'm actually looking at the haze of that darkness is actually the darkness of that mountainside, and that I just can't see that my peripheral vision doesn't bring in how broad the base of that mountain is, or the top of my roof of my car is cutting off the snow cap or whatever it is. So that's one. And another one would be that I'll give you an example. At lunch, I would hold up a piece of broccoli. I remember doing this in college, holding up a piece of broccoli and then trying to forget which way it should fall when I let go of it. Because I have a gravitocentric worldview.
Sure. Yes.
I grew up in a gravity well.
Sure.
And so that's down. But of course, down means nothing
to eliminate any
all
assumption
of the universe.
Yes.
For the vast
pretty
majority
much
of the
all
universe,
of it. Yeah.
there's nothing.
Yeah.
There's no up or down. So I said, how can I get myself into a root experience of the
where
universe
I literally
don't know what down is? And so I would look at it and I could get this is to unknow something.
Yeah.
And I taught myself to unknow things. That I could look at something and I could come to a moment of, I'd say mental, but it also felt physical. A mental suspension.
Genuinely suspending those expectations.
Suspending that, but it felt like a suspension, like a little floating feeling.
Yeah, sure.
And then I knew it would work if I let go of it, and I was surprised.
Oh, really? That's great.
And I would go, ha ha. And I would laugh, and I'd go, oh shit, I forgot. And then I'd go, oh shit, I forgot. But the thing is that in that trick, you have to forget your intention. You have to have the intention, then you have to stop having the intention, or rather, and when you do that, you can slide under the tripwire of the universe. And then for me, I could perceive things more clearly.
I think science fiction helps with this, right? I mean, Paul's a huge sci-fi fan. I'm a little bit. I know that, Stephen, you're a big science fiction fan. It helps rearrange the laws of physics.
I think it invites you to see things differently is what it does.
To break expectations, to rethink expectations.
It doesn't help you do it, but it says it's possible.
Yeah. Okay. But this makes me think about something else I want to talk about, but this makes me think you were studying there at school, you were studying theater, but you discovered at some point improvisation, all of which sounds like this is part and parcel of improvisation. I mean, it's like you've discovered something. You've discovered the thing that is literalizing this in front of an audience or in front of another performer, and you're actually, I mean, you're actually not going through any of these thought processes, but you're discovering this place.
Better not be.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like you're finding the actual theater of that shit happening to you. I mean, that's amazing.
My reaction to improvisation was entirely visceral. The first time I saw it.
It has to be.
I don't mean games, but like, not to knock on games, but scenic improvisation, which is a complex form of game. And I saw it at a small club called Cross Currents underneath the Belmont L in Chicago. And a friend said, hey, they're improvising one-act plays. Do you want to come see? I hear it's kind of cool. I was a junior. I went down there. I hadn't been in theater school very long. And I went down there and I saw it. And I remember the group on stage was called Barons Barracudas. And I don't know if you guys know who Dave Pasquesi is, but
yes,
Pasquesi.
I know Dave. Yeah.
Okay, well, so Dave.
Amazing.
Dave was on stage.
Okay, yes.
And it was Dave and Honor Finnegan and Joel Murray, Bill's younger brother, and a couple other people whose name escaped me now. Please forgive me if you're listening. And I went, I don't know why, but I have to do this.
Absolutely. It makes perfect sense.
I have to do this because there's a real sense of suspension and trust.
Yeah, you're the guy with the broccoli falling up. It's like, how could you not respond to that? I mean, it's like you're
never
the dude
fell
doing,
up, though. Unfortunately, never fell
I know,
up.
but
I'm not that
you're the
good.
you're the guy eliminating the possibility it could. But so it must have been that's interesting. And the first time you must have engaged in it must have been an absolutely revelatory thing. I mean, it must have been like,
I mean, I think the promise of it was revelatory. I think like a lot of people who start, I got in my head and I was a nervous performer as anybody else. And you want to succeed.
It's got to be hard to get the zone.
You want to succeed, whatever that is. And to understand that there isn't a plan and that you can't dictate other people's actions and that thing that you think is going to happen is not as important as what actually is going to happen. And that the most important person on stage is the other person and just shut up and listen.
Totally,
and all of that.
Fantastic.
But the thing that really hooked me, and it's kind of an overused. It's made its way into popular culture. But in 1984, when I first heard it, nobody talked about this. Is that the yes and of improvisation made complete sense to me. That I get because that's acceptance and addition.
Totally.
And that requires awareness. You have to see and be seen, hear and be heard, feel and be felt. All of that made enormous sense to me as somebody studying acting, but also as a human. And
as a person, it sounds
for me.
like it. Yes, it sounds like it. It sounds like a natural extension of who you were and where you were going anyway. So it's really kind of cool. That's amazing. I mean, it sounds like it.
I mean, in some ways, I was trying to maintain my tadpole status. So I wouldn't grow into the accepted frog.
Yes, the accepted frog. There's your memoir title. There's a good memoir title: Tadpole Status and Accepted Frog.
But we interviewed Amy Sedaris, and she said during the improvisation when people are doing yes and, she likes to sometimes just say no, and then just like block.
I think that's when you're a Zen master. When you get to be Zen master, you can start saying no.
That is really up here. Do you know the story? I believe it's in Raise High the Roof Beam Carpenters by Salinger.
No,
where a certain Duke Moo said to his horse master who was retiring, please tell me who could take over for you when you're retired. He goes, oh, there is a certain Polo in this village. You should go to him and ask him to find you a superlative horse. And so they send a person to Polo, and Polo says, oh, yes, there is a perfect horse for the Duke. It is a dun-colored mare, and you will find it in this field. And so they go find this dun-colored mare in this field, and Duke Moo goes back to his, whoever his old horse master was, and he goes, your Polo is a fool. He goes, why? He says, because we went to go look for the dun-colored mare, and it was a coal-black stallion. And the old master said, oh, has he really gotten so far as that? Is that he perceives what is essential about the horse.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And ignores what is unessential.
Amazing.
He is not only my replacement, I am in no way his equal.
Amazing.
And it turned out it truly was a superlative horse. And I love that story. And that's what you're talking with Amy. Is like, yes, of course you can say no. I had a teacher, I remember I took this rigorous rhetoric course for my freshman year. They had to take rhetoric. And a very intense rhetoric course.
Rhetoric. That's so awesome. The rhetoric.
And they would beat essay form into us and grammar and everything.
Absolutely.
So I remember saying to the professor, but George Bernard Shaw and Hemingway, don't obey these rules all the time. And the professor goes, are you trying to argue that George Bernard Shaw and Ernest Hemingway don't know these rules?
Yeah, exactly.
I said, okay. He goes,
yeah, thank you, sir.
Learn these rules and then you can break them.
Exactly.
That's great.
Yeah. I want to talk about science fiction. I'm interested because I know you're a fantasy fan as well. And I'm just interested that you
started in sci-fi, though. I started in sci-fi.
You started in sci-fi and you moved to fantasy. That's interesting.
And I have read much more sci-fi than I have read fantasy.
That's
but I have drilled deeper in some fantasy worlds.
But I'm interested to know what is the specific joy that you get from fantasy that you don't necessarily from sci-fi? Are there different pleasures to be had from the two of them? Or do they give you a different buzz, or is it like just an extension of the same thing?
I don't know. First you have to I think say like, what is sci-fi?
Right.
What is science fiction and what is fantasy? Like, what are those two things?
What is the difference between them?
And why, when I was a kid, were they always ghettoized to the same little wire rack?
Together. Yeah.
Together.
Yeah, that's
sci-fi
right.
fantasy and the wire rack. And people would say, people would say, oh, I love science fiction. I read Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And I'd go like, what are you doing?
Yes.
What are you doing?
Yes. Well, I always loved it when people would say, well, it's all speculative fiction. And I would go, but isn't all fiction speculative fiction? I was like, but that's really weird. Because isn't all of it I mean, Philip Roth, isn't he kind of speculating?
Exactly. Exactly.
None of it seems to be.
That's really funny. In the same, it's all speculative fiction in the same way that all improvisation is games. Some of the games are just so complex you can't perceive the rules.
Right.
Because you're writing the rules as you go.
Yeah.
But doesn't science fiction have metaphysically, it's not as presumptuous. It doesn't create like other entities and, like
alien races.
I think it does.
Yeah, but that's naturalistic. Races. That's metaphysically within the bounds of Darwinian, you know what I mean, nature, even though it's in another
place. This is talking about
I mean,
things that just don't exist. Fantasy
is like Gandalf
and
shit is more.
There's no elves. There's no elves.
And 100%, I'm not upset that you just said Gandalf and shit. I'm perfectly fine with that. I want you to know that everything's great.
Man.
I do have to go, though. I do
Thanks for joining us.
Sorry about that.
No, but that's interesting.
But here's the thing about, there are people who break your... I mean, the new wave science fiction in the 1960s, people like Harlan Ellison.
Oh, yeah.
Or Roger Zelazny. They're writing, what do you call Jack of Shadows? Is Jack of Shadows science fiction or fantasy?
Alien? Right.
Yeah. What's happening?
Yeah.
It's a
science
planet.
fantasy. Science fantasy comes.
Fantasy.
Space
so
romance and stuff.
What is Lord of Light? What does that do?
Yeah,
How does that what is that?
Yeah.
And of course,
don't
forget Arthur C. Clarke's Any Sufficiently Advanced Civilization is Indistinguishable from Magic. So that also blurs the line in some ways.
Yeah.
But so science fiction was just first for me because I literally, get back to my father and my brothers, that they die and we go to the funeral and I'm back at the funeral at my brother Ed's house and he reads a lot of science fiction. All the science fiction I read was my brother Ed and Jim's because they're 19 and 18 years older than I am. And they left all that stuff. They left all that stuff at home when they went off and had their lives. So I had all these books and books. Golden Age, 1950s. Because they were born in 45 and 46. And so I'm reading 1950s and early 60s science fiction. Just those
tons
old pulp fiction. And you turn the page and it cracks off.
Yellowed.
You go to your mom to get hair bands to put around it. And then you fall asleep and that narcotic effect of that pulp paper. Unbelievable.
That moldy, musty smell. God bless it.
So I had this terrible headache and I'm lying on the bed to try to recover in a spare room of his. And there's a book on the shelf and it's The Long Arm of Gil Hamilton by Larry Niven. I picked it off the shelf and I read it. I was gone, baby.
Gone.
I was gone.
How
Say
old were
goodbye.
You? How old were you?
I think this was, I literally think it was the weekend my father and my brothers were buried. I think it was that week. I think I was 10.
Wow.
I think I was 10. I might have been a little over. It might have been another trip up there.
But it's
I'm not sure when.
But
it's all associated with their death.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I love problem solving. And a lot of science fiction is about
It's
problem
solving.
solving.
It is.
Interesting.
It is.
You know,
Decoding things and
a lot of science fiction is also like kind of related to mystery. You know, mystery writing.
Yeah.
And I also
interesting.
I also like science.
Yep.
And you know, Niven, James Hogan.
James Hogan. James Hogan. Inherit the Stars.
I can come up with one where his eyes.
Oh God! Inherit the Stars.
Hard sci-fi.
Yes, me too. I loved it too. Well, it made me feel smart. It made me feel smart. I'm not going to lie about it. It made me feel smart.
When I read Asimov, I literally feel like I can think more clearly after reading Asimov. Because his characters are going, let me lay it out for you.
Yes, logic is a huge thing with him. Yeah.
So that was appealing to me. And my father was a scientist. My father was an immunologist, and you know, he was an administrator, but he was really a bench scientist, was really what he loved. And so that was kind of appealing to me.
Awesome.
And then a friend just gave me The Lord of the Rings when I was 12. And I almost drowned in it. I went so deeply.
I can only
I literally
imagine,
remember being in Two Towers in the chapter The Auric Eye, where Pippin and Merry have been taken. And I literally remember like being on my mother's couch reading it for the first time and going like this and going, because I realized I hadn't breathed. I hadn't breathed in like a minute, but it felt like I was underwater. It felt like I was in this other world. And of course, I was looking for escape. And if science fiction is an escape, fantasy is a further escape.
Even more, even more.
So I read a lot of fantasy after that. I mean, I read a shit ton of science fiction, and as Mr. Giamatti will tell you, some pretty deep cut like stuff that nobody
very
reads.
weird stuff.
Like people don't read A.E. Benbow. People don't read Henry Kuttner.
I still read it. I still read that shit.
So do I. But
I know you do.
But like even in my day at that age, no one was reading that stuff.
No, it's true. Actually, nobody was reading that stuff.
Keith
That's
Laumer.
Very true.
Yeah.
Yes. None of that stuff people were reading. That's true.
So I loved all that stuff, and I kept reading it. I read about a book a day. Because I had hundreds and hundreds of them, and then I would use all of my allowance.
Sure.
Did it help you with grief? Like, is it kind of part of grief processing? I mean,
helped me not address it.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
sure.
that.
Helped you just avoid it.
Like,
absolutely.
Does Xanax help you with your anxiety? What anxiety?
That's exactly it. No, absolutely. No, me too.
Where's that smoke coming from my gear case? What smoke? I can't smell anything.
No, that's it. And fantasy takes you to an even more. It eliminates all the hardware and all.
But I will say this: fantasy did help me address my grief because Tolkien is all about grief.
Yeah, there's stuff
when I was
in there.
13. When I was 13, I read the biography by Humphrey Carpenter of Tolkien. Tolkien loses his dad when he's a kid and loses his mother when he's 13.
Wow.
And loses everything. Ends up living in an orphanage. And as Tolkien says, like, you know, as Gandalf says, I will not say do not cry, for not all tears are an evil. But he also said, really, I'm paraphrasing him, only sad stories can make you happy. That's I'm only mildly paraphrasing him there, but he said something like that, like really only sad stories can make you happy. And he also says in a particular letter he wrote to this, a Catholic priest had written him and said, what, because there's this concept within the Tolkien mythos in that men and elves are both made by God, by Eru. And no one knows what happens with men. They know that elves go onto the halls of Mandos, and that's how they live forever, even if they're killed in battle or something. But men go to a place that even the Valar know not. They don't know what God's plan is, or Eru's plan is for men. But they go to this place, and that death is called the gift of Iluvatar, who is also another name for God. The gift of Iluvatar to men. This gift. And so this priest writes Tolkien and said, hey, is that a punishment?
Yeah, right.
Isn't that a punishment for sin? Why is it called a gift? And Tolkien writes back, and I'm paraphrasing here. He says, what punishments of God are not gifts?
Oh.
Right.
So that helps.
He would feel that personally.
Yes, that's perfect. Absolutely.
Feel that personally.
No, I didn't read any of that shit
at the time
until I was in my 30s and 40s. Like I didn't get that deep until like reading his letters and everything until later. that idea is combed into the fabric.
Yeah.
There's nothing religious, getting back to our Catholicity. There's nothing he purposefully put nothing in the Lord of the Rings that was religious. No one worships anybody. There's no religion at all.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And because he didn't purposely want anything like that. What he talked about was he didn't like allegory. He didn't like things to be decoded. He thought that his work had no allegorical significance, but that he could perceive that for some people it had applicability. And the fact that there is great beauty that also comes with grief, and that grief itself, there's a character called Nienna, who is one of the Valar, which is like the angels. And Nienna is the only character that's not like a Greek god. She doesn't have a counterpart. And what she does is she weeps forever. And she turns grief into wisdom. That's what she does. And that is all through Tolkien.
I would say too, what's interesting in fantasy, and it's just occurring to me now, is that the essential trope of fantasy is the quest, is the effort to find what is lost, to return something, to return to something. So it's essentially it's always a quest to find generally something's lost that will redeem things, that will change things. So that, not that science fiction can't have that in it too, but it seems like that's the basic idea. Right.
Is Star Wars science fiction or fantasy? Yeah.
That's religion too. That's the same thing that religion, to me, my view is that stories and religion are doing the same thing. They're like flight simulators to help you deal with the actual world. I can understand grief better. I can understand myself. I can understand others better. I feel like it's all a piece of the same imagination. That's my view.
A quest.
Yeah. Anyway.
I'll tell you one more story, then I got to go.
Please, okay.
If you're okay with this.
Yeah, please.
Please. You've been very generous with your time.
Story. It's a Leland Roloff story.
Oh, good. All right, let's close with Leland Roloff.
So there's an old building in Northwestern. It's one of the older buildings. It's called Fisk Hall. And Fisk Hall, I think a lot of the Medill journalism classes are taught there too. And it has these old marble staircases with cast iron railings and very worn wooden rail tops, handholds, and it's switchbacks. It starts in the middle. You can go one side or the other. It goes to a landing and it switches back to a common landing at the top. And then you go into the top hallway if your class is on the second floor. And all my classes always were for reasons I don't understand. And between the two, between the top floor and the bottom floor, that landing that you turned on had huge Palladian windows with very deep and high windowsills. And I had classes in the morning and in the afternoon. I had a 9 a.m. and an 11 in that building. And so between classes, I would just go halfway down the steps and hop up onto that windowsill, which was, probably 4 feet deep and 6 feet wide. And I would sit up there and I would study for my next class. Lee Roloff came down one day, and he saw me and he said, "How perfect. You aren't down there and you aren't up there. You need your iron haunts." Okay. So Iron Haunts, anyone? The Iron Man, Iron John, same thing.
It's a Grimm thing.
Yes,
it's a Grimm
thing.
story.
It's the wild man that you must make. You must learn, follow, make peace with, and then leave to become the king.
Right.
So you must find your Iron Haunts
it's
first.
It's like the Green Knight and all that stuff.
Very much so. You have to go out into the forest to find him. The boy finds him, and then he gets the girl with the golden hair. And but. So, okay. The wild man, the Enkidu to Gilgamesh.
Yes.
Exactly.
Okay. And so, but one day I didn't actually go onto that platform. It was later in the year. I had the morning class, and the morning class was that day, for whatever reason, in the same classroom as Leland Roloff's 11 o'clock class. So I stayed, I did my morning class, which I think was, Frank Galati. I don't know if you know Frank Galati.
Sure, absolutely. Great
I believe
director.
we were studying The Dead by Frank Galati. We're studying Joyce, but with Frank Galati.
With Frank Galati. Wow, that's amazing.
With Frank, amazing.
A great director.
Yeah, wonderful. Just lost him this year.
Yep.
And then there was an hour break, and then I had a class in the same classroom. So I went, I'll just stay here. So I just sat there and read and got ready for my next class. Everybody piles in at 11 o'clock. So I haven't been out in the world for the last 2 hours. Everybody piles into the class and everybody's perfectly quiet, but it's, whatever. Leland Roloff comes in, closes the door, puts his book down, and he said, as we study the Homeric hymn, let us consider the figure of the hero in light of the space shuttle's explosion.
Holy shit.
And I said, I got up halfway out of my seat.
Yeah.
And I yelled, what?
Oh my God.
Because I'm the only one who doesn't know in the class.
No smartphones.
Amazing.
And he turns to me and says, terrible, isn't it? And then he lectures about what does it mean to be a hero and why do we look to heroes? And who am I thinking of? Orly, my astronaut.
Of course. Was he on it?
No.
Oh, God.
And he never flew.
Oh, my God.
He didn't fly.
Because they suspended the program for the next 4 years.
Wow.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Holy
Incredible.
cow.
So I don't know where it came to him, but if he's listening to this, hi, it was lovely talking to you in 1984.
I bet, yes. That's amazing.
Fantastic.
Amazing.
That's a good place for us
That's
to
a fantastic
maybe,
place. Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming on the
Holy
Chinwag.
cow. Amazing.
Yeah.
I so enjoyed this. Anytime,
I hope
gentlemen.
so. I hope so.
Please.
We
We'll
would love to have you
It's
back because
a
there's
real
still
pleasure.
a lot more to talk
We
about.
barely talked.
We barely talked. It's true.
Thank you for letting me
no.
monologue.
Please,
it's
please.
so much fun.
It's the whole point. Thank you so much, sir.
A pleasure to meet you.
Thank you,
Maestro
sir. What a
Giamatti,
pleasure.
as always.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Bye, guys.
Chinwag is a production of Treefort Media and Touchy Feely Films. Hosted and executive produced by Paul Giamatti and Stephen Asma. Executive producers for Treefort are Kelly Garner and Lisa Ammerman. Dan Carey is executive producer for Touchy Feely. Our series producer is Rachel Whitley Bernstein. Our associate producer is Andrew Miller. Original theme music by Luke Top with additional music by Via Mardot. Oscar Guido is our executive in charge of production. Tom Monahan is head of audio for Treefort. Animation created by Alex Sokol. Audio production, supervision, and editing by Maxwell Carney. Additional audio assistance and mixing by Jeff Neal. With additional production management from Renee Levesque. Clara Wong is Celestial Empress of Benevolent Knowledge. Lastly, for more information, go to chinwagpod.fm and find us on Instagram or TikTok at chinwagpod or on Twitter at chinwag_pod.